let's discuss it today's lecture. The perception. Perception. Uh, when you look at today's lecture, perception, dimensions of the emotion, and other factors which affect organizational behavior and the applications of the organizational behavior. So we will focus on these particular topics in today's lecture. So at the end of this lecture, we will be able to develop our views about the perception, how emotion play a significant role in shaping organizational environment, the factors which affect emotions, and can and you can finally reflect on your own emotions in the light of the organizational setting in which you are working. So in this way, we will look at the learning outcomes of today's lecture. So before going to discuss thoroughly at the lecture of today's uh, mm, topics, so let's look at how you come up with the understanding of the term perception. So perception is considered to be as a process as well as a product. So when we look at this as a process, so it's a sensory impression that that develops inside one's mind. So when you look at something or some person or a situation, so you come up with some impressions, you come up with some ideas. So those ideas which develop over the period of time means so you develop a meaning associated with your point of view, associated with some ideas. So that's how you can make sense of the meaning of the perception. The perception, in simple words, are the ideas or the mindset or the belief that you come up with about something, some person, or a situation that involves definitely your thinking process, your belief system, and your personal attitude. So all together, mm, these shape your perception about the things, about the people, and the environment. There are many factors which affect or which influence the perception of a person. For example, when you look at how these influence, how these factors influence your perception. So there are uh, mm, receiver, target, and context. These three factors are very important to understand while understanding the factors influencing the perception. So when you look at perceiver, that is reside in perception basically reside in the perceiver. What kind of person you are, who you are basically, how you uh, think about the things you observe, the people you come across, you meet the people, and the situations in which you are living. So, how you make meaning about all these kind of things, how you develop your understanding about these things. So that is the perceiver, the person who perceives, the person who make meaning of the things, use the sensory impressions. That's how you can make meaning of the perception. And second is the target. On one side, you as a perceiver. On the second side, the object that is that is perceived, that is there. You are looking at, you are observing, you are making meaning about that particular object. So, so this is the second most important factor which influence your perception. Here, if the target is something according to your taste, according to your expectations, according to the mindset you have, and then you as a perceiver will perceive a positive image of that particular target. And on the other hand, if that target, if that person, if that object, if that situation is against your, as a perceiver, against your mindset, against your taste, against your uh, uh, idea, uh, then you will definitely uh, come up with something that is against your expectation. So you will have an image of that object that is against so that there could be a negative perception of that target. And lastly, that is the the context of the situation in which the perception is made. Your environment. What kind of the situation in which you are living? What is the environment around you? So how you perceive that thing, under what conditions you are looking at a target, what is your mood, that also depends upon perceiving something, the overall conditions around yourself while you are looking at a target to develop a perception about that thing. So these three basic things play vital role in developing perception about things, perception about people, perception about the situations. So uh, to explain more in detail about these three important aspects. So look at how you as perceiver have some set of attitudes. So your attitudes uh, are the most important factors which influence your perception. So as earlier we discussed thoroughly about the attitudes. So this attitude uh, at different levels help you or influence you to develop your perception. And motives. What are the motives do you have? What are the interests do you have? What is your experience? What are your expectations about you know the object that is that you perceive, that is your target. So when you have these not only five but more than these factors as a perceiver, you have in your mindset, you have these sort of things with you as a person, as a perceiver. So which highly influence while developing a particular perception in yourself about the things. Secondly, that is the situation, the time, the work setting, the work environment, the social setting, the communication, the communication with the target, the communication with the, for example, if the target is a person, so how you communicate that person, how you meet that person, what are the social settings that you are using to observe that person and develop a particular perception about that person, and the time availability of the time. How long do you have an interaction about that person with that person to develop a particular perception about that? So all these matter a lot because the another factor that is the target, that is basically the ultimate thing about which you are developing a particular perception. So that has yet another dimensions. For example, uh, uh, the novelty. Novelty means here the uniqueness, the newness of that target. That is about which you are developing a particular perception. So the motion, sound, size, the background, the proximity, and similarity means all these kind of the things, not limited to these things, but also other things depending upon the context, depending upon the situation. If something is new to you, if something is a growing one, is a developing one, the size and the sound of that object means uh, if that sounds good to you, if sound better to you, looks looks good, and the background of that thing is you are somewhat familiar with that background. So these are if that is something like you have earlier come across and you have some understanding about that thing. So, with these kind of factors, you will pursue a specific meaning, a specific picture of that factor. Here we will look at this attribution theory, how this attribution theory helps you to develop a particular sort of perception of a thing. So judging people differently depend upon meaning attributed to a behavior. So whatever the behavior that is you as a perceiver you are exhibiting a particular sort of behavior highly depends upon how you judge the people. For example, determining whether caused internally or externally, depending upon distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. For example, your behavior that depends upon again different things. For example, if you behave uh, in all sort of situations, whatever the situation might be, but you are behaving in the same way over a period of time. So that means you are a consistent person. Your behavior, there is a consistency in your behavior. You do not change your behavior over a period of time, whatsoever conditions might be, whatsoever the situation might be, but you do not change your behavior. You all the time behave in a very consistent manner, very in a same manner. So you behave like that. So this means that you are a consistent person. And when you behave in same behavior in similar situation, for example, if someone treats you in a good manner, you behave in a different way. Similarly, if someone treats you badly, so you behave in a different way. Means that while there are similar situations, you behave uh, with a particular behavior, same behavior. If two people behave with you in a same way, so your behavior will be same with those similar situations, and vice versa. If, for example, there are two different situations, in two different people behave in their own way, so your behavior will be different with those two different situations. So that is, your distinctiveness, different behavior in different situations, and same behavior in similar situations, and same behavior in over the period of time. So this attribution theory is basically is looking at how you as a person behave over a period of time in similar situations, in different situations, with different people, with different scenarios. So that highly depends upon uh, your internal and external uh, situations. So that determines how you feel about that, how you, as a person, what kind of the situation is around you. So that is how you can understand about judging people and making meaning that is attributed to your behavior. So there are few things which can help you to understand how to judge other people. For example, selectivity. If your behavior, if you are a person, you have particular attitudes of observer. As an observer, you have particular attitudes. For example, um, you do not go in detail about understanding a particular thing. Rather, you pick some bits and pieces of the information about a person, about an object, or about a situation, and you come up with some meaning about that particular object. So this means that you are you in your attitude as an observer is a selectivity. So selectivity means you are a person, you judge people, you judge objects, you judge situations based on particular information that you come across about that thing. Assume similarity is yet another important aspect to that is to judge others. Perceptions of others more influenced by what the observer is like or thinks. For example, whatever your taste is all about, whatever your likeness, whatever your thinking habits are all about, accordingly you pursue other people. So, so you look the people through your own lens, not what the people actually are. So that is what you assume similarity. What you think, what you like, and what you dislike. Based on that, you pursue people. So you look at the people, you look at the world. So that's how you can understand stereotyping. That is, for example, that is the association of the people or group of the people or a particular taste of the people or a particular class of the people based on their class, based on their association, based on their group membership. So you assume, you give a particular meaning, you give a particular sort of label to those people. For example, if there are some people who are smokers, and there are some members in a group who mostly smoke. So if someone joins that group and that is not a smoker, even you give a particular same level to that person because of that association, because of that group members. So that is how you can understand this stereotyping. Similarly, a term like hollow effect. For example, in your class, a student is getting good marks every time in during presentation because the student have good class participation, and while the presenting in the class, that student is confident enough. And based on that, if you uh, uh, give more marks in written paper, although that person did not perform as that level of the performance. So that is, based on a single characteristic of the classroom presentation or the classroom participation. If you think that person is an outstanding in even writing, so that it means that you judge a person using a very shortcut, using a very uh, single single characteristics of that person. That is mean you did not explore that person thoroughly. You just pick a particular information, and based on that information, you associate it a particular label to that person. So again, these are some of your ways to judge people, how you perceive people, how you understand situations, how you make meaning about the objects. So here are few, images, pictures, and the images and the perceptions of the people. When you look at these images and see what comes to your mind, so you will guess. There is a picture, and in this picture there are many horses. Now this depends upon how this target. For example, this picture is a target, and you as a perceiver, and the medium in front of you is a color picture, and around you what kind of the situations might be that may also affect on your perception. So when you look closely at this picture, there are a number of horses. There are a number of horses you can observe in this picture, and you can count even how many horses are there in this picture. So this depends upon the lens you are using to observe this target and make meaning with the pictures of horses from this complex picture. Look at here and see how can you develop your own meaning of the perception. There is uh, winter season. It might be a deer is in the jungle, so you can see what kind of things about this deer in this jungle in the winter snow falling season. So what comes to your mind, how you perceive this picture, how you perceive about this situation, how do you perceive this deer in your mind. That depends upon your own experience, your own knowledge, your own observation, the way you look at the way you use a particular lens to observe this picture and make meaning with your about your own experience. Similarly, there is another picture, so you can see how you can make a meaning of this picture. So that depends upon your observation skills, the way you are observing, the way you look at and make meaning of that thing. We have discussed perceptions here in this lecture, and previously we looked at the values and emotions, personality types, and attitudes of the individual, group of people, and the organization. Because organizational behavior is not so simple to understand. Yet we need to understand all these kind of things so as to develop our own meaning of this organizational behavior. So organizational behavior is interested with a particular pattern of behavior of an individual that is associated with the job, that is job related attitude, job related behavior of an individual. It's not all sort of behavior of an individual, but only in the organizational behavior that is interested is the job related behavior. So we will make meaning in this way. In the light of organizational behavior and the influence of these factors on the performance of the organization, because your performance is counted in the light of the group of members in the organization and the organizational performance, because organizational performance depends upon department's performance, group of people's performance, and individuals' performance. So the behavior or the individual of in organization and the group of people in the organization and the or behavior of the organization altogether are interlinked with each other. So because of the individual behavior, that is job related behavior of that person, and that matters a lot when that person sits in a particular group, and that influence the behavior of the group as well. And similarly, these different groups have different sort of behavior, and that depends upon the behavior of the organization. So in this way, we can understand how organizational behavior at individual level, group level, and at organizational level make meaning to different concepts related to perception, values, emotions, motivation, personality, attitudes, and ability, etc. Behavior and the variables, factors which influence behavior. So one thing is that you have a particular behavior. That is the individual behavior. That's a personal behavior, and that behavior is influenced by some variables. The variables which influence your behavior are very important to understand in the organizational setting, in the organizational culture. Otherwise, if the manager in the organization, the leadership in the organization, does not understand what kind of the variables which influence behavior of individuals, behavior of group, and the behavior of the organization at all. So it is very difficult for the organization to achieve its objectives. So therefore, you need to understand this whole set of dynamics of the organization in the light of the behavior. So when we look at the behavior, what kind of the things, how we can understand this behavior, and what kind of the factors influence behavior. So you can again look at this slide to make your own meaning how this individual behavior that is shaped because of the motivation, because of the perception, because of your learning, and your learning leads to further your ability to learn, your ability to understand, and your ability to pursue, your ability to motivate. And similarly, when you look at this personality, so what kind of the personality you have, how you learn, how your learning influence your perception, how your learning influence your motivation. At the same time, when you look at the attitudes, what kind of the attitudes do you have? Uh, what is that attitude that motivates you to behave in certain way? What is that attitude that develops a particular sort of perception about the things or the people in the organization or in the society? What are the values do you have, and how you associate those values with your own attitude? So if there is a violation of some values, and what would be your attitude, and how that attitude motivates or demotivates or develop a particular sort of perception, and that further triggers your particular behavior in a particular situation. That whole story depends upon some sort of variables which affect your behavior. So those variables are motivation, perception, learning, and which could be understand in the light of your ability, in the light of your personality, in the light of your attitudes and the values. So there are some dimensions of emotion. For example, in organizational behavior, when we look at the emotion of an individual, we look at the emotion in along a continent, not only at a single static point, but rather we look the dimensions of emotion in along a continent. For example, at one side you look at the happiness, at the another side you can see disgust and anger and sadness, fear, and up to surprise and happiness. So these are the different sort of things when you look at how you react to a particular situation when you are happy, and at the same time when you are angry or when you are very sad. So what will be your emotions? So your emotions are associated with different sort of the dimensions of the emotion. So that emotion is not something a separate sort of feeling. Rather, this emotion is associated with the contextual setting, the situation, the overall feeling that causes because of the different sort of dimensions. So emotional dimension can be understood in the form of intensity. So people give different responses to identical emotion provoking stimuli. So different people have different responses to even identical emotion provoking stimuli. If you have identical emotion provoking stimuli at the organization, that your boss says uh, you are all lazy workers. For example, this is an identical emotion provoking stimuli from the manager to all the people in the organization, but different people will uh, respond to this particular stimuli in a different way because they have different, dimensions of emotion, because they have different sort of happiness, different sort of feeling, fearness, and anger, etc. So that's how you can how intensity of an individual uh, triggers particular sort of response whenever there is a there is a emotion provoking stimuli. The reasons could be personality and job requirement. So why people do this means every person have different personality type, different personality shape, and they have different job requirements. And based on that, they might react differently because they have their own personality, their own dimensions of emotion, and their own set of values and their own, particular attitudes and abilities, which all together influence the way that person reacts to an identical emotion provoking stimuli in a different way. So that's how you can. And you can come up with your own and that of your even siblings at home and your close friend circle. When you observe, when you look at those people, how they in a similar emotion, identical emotions provoking stimuli situations, they react in different manner you can understand the whole background. So you can go back to those slides which we thoroughly discussed, how these different factors. For example, when you look at you see here the perception, the values, the emotion, the personality, the attitudes, motivation, ability, and all these kind of things you can link with these particular response. And the same way, the frequency and duration. So this is also very important to understand for how long and how frequently. Frequency means how frequently, and duration means for how long. So your emotional level that remains there, that is there. So emotional level that requires high frequency or long duration is more demanding. For example, if a particular uh, person that has a uh, that is a that has a high frequency and long duration of this emotional level means that is something you as a manager need to understand. So how to avoid, how to make that thing cool and calm. So that is a um, situation to understand. And employees need to know not only the kind of emotion to be displayed and its frequency, but also how frequently and for how long the effort that has to be made in organizational setting. So you can see how managers need to understand the whole set of emotions those the people are exhibiting in the organization in a different manner. So how long they are doing, uh, and what is the frequency of their emotional expressions in situations in the organization. Again, there are some external constraints of emotions. How organizational organization is influences people and they influence their emotions. How the cultural setting of the organization influences people to come up with some sort of emotions. So that is the external constraints of the emotion. External constraint means the the constraints which 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 are there as an obstacle on way to your emotional instability, your emotional reactions. So these are the external. Or if the organizational culture, if the organizational uh, situation are, are not in favoring you, whatever you have a particular expectation from the organization. If that organization has a culture that is against your expectation, if that organization has something that you do not like it, so all these matter a lot. Similarly, when you look at the possible reasons for gender differences, for example, when we say these two factors, which are external constraints to emotion in the light of the organizational behavior, there are another dimension that is the gender. For example, in some organizations, gender discriminations. In some organization, there is a gender biasness is there. So those kind of things also influence your emotional instability. When you look at this, for example, socialization. So when you understand people with the lens of gender, you can see men are taught to be brave and tough, whereas women are nurtured. So this is a particular sort of perception that is there that plays a significant role how people show their emotions in the organization. Similarly, women may have more innate ability to read others and present their emotions. So that's how you can understand women that they have some inborn abilities to read people and their and their emotions. So that's how you can, with the lens of gender, you can pursue what kind of the exposure, emotional expressions of the people in the organization might be. So women may have a greater need for social approval and a higher propensity to show emotions. So you can see. So if women have innate abilities to read others' emotion and their own, present their own emotions, so they have greater need for social approval, and a higher propensity to show their emotions. That's how you can understand with the lens of the gender. Similarly, emotion and a natural culture, when you look at this particular slide, so cultural factors influence what is or what is not considered emotionally appropriate. So there are different cultural settings, there are different cultural values. So in the light of those cultural values, you you can understand the people's emotion. Seems to be high agreement of the meaning by emotions within cultures. So within their cultures, every person have their own meaning making of the things that is associated with emotions. Similarly, uh, what's acceptable in one's culture may seem extremely unusual or unacceptable or dysfunctional in another culture. So, for example, when we look at Western culture, Eastern culture in general, so you can come across which kind of the things are acceptable in Eastern culture and which kind of the things are acceptable in Western culture. So, so you can see these emotions in the light of this uh, national or international cultural settings. So there's another point that we need to discuss over here is that organizational behavior uh, and its applications, organizational behavior applications. What are the applications of the organizational behavior? That is the ability and selection. People who know their emotions and are good at reading others' emotions may be more effective in their job. So why the question is why we need to understand emotions of the individuals and the factors which directly or indirectly influence emotion of the people. Either women are good for organization or bad or men. So these all depends upon the applications. So when you as an HR manager or an organizational leader, leader in your organization, so you need to know all these kind of the things. Which person is better for a particular job? Which person is good for desk job? Which person is good for field job, field work? So you need to understand all these kind of emotional settings, emotional dimensions, and the factors which trigger the emotions of the male and it triggers the emotion of the female. So all these are very important to understand in light of the organizational job. The people who would be the effective person in their job. So this to explore, you need to understand, uh, you know, uh, these all kind of things. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is yet another important aspect to understand. because the variety of the non-cognitive skills, capabilities, and competencies that influence a person's ability succeed in coping with the environmental demands and pressures. So that's why you need to understand not only this emotion and emotion-related factors which triggers those emotions, but also you need to understand what is the ability of an individual to understand particular situation and exhibit in that situation with an acceptable level of the emotional response. So that is very important to understand. So for to understand that, you need an emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence that gives you a sort of understanding. So who is emotionally intelligent and who is not intelligent. So what kind of in what kind of situation one needs to react to the situation and why. So that's how you can understand. So emotional intelligence. To understand this emotional intelligence, you need to look at yet another five dimensions. So how these dimensions help you to understand either a person is emotionally intelligent or not. So, so to understand this emotional intelligence, you need to be self-aware. Self-awareness is very important. The ability to be aware of what you are feeling. So that is self-awareness. Second is self-management. So the ability to manage one's own emotions and impulses over the period of time in different situations with different people in the organization. So you need to understand this thing is how to manage your own emotions. Self motivation. That's another yet important dimension of the emotional intelligence. If you are a self-motivated person, you can motivate, you have the ability to persist in the face of setbacks and failures, how to control your emotion, how to, motivate your emotion, motivate yourself to behave with some certain level of emotion. So that's how you can understand this third dimension of the intelligence. That is the empathy. Empathy, empathy means the ability to sense how others are feeling. So keeping yourself in the shoes of others. So when someone is in trouble, and you should put yourself in the same situation that someone is facing. So if you have this ability, means that you have empathy. So empathy is another important dimension of the emotional intelligence. And the last one is the social skill, the ability to handle emotions of the others. If you have good social skills and as a manager, you would be a successful one because you can handle the emotions of the other people in the organization in an effective manner. So that is another application of organizational behavior in the light of these emotions is decision making. Decision making decisions are influenced by one's feelings at a particular moment. Given the same objective data, people may make different choices when they are angry and stressed. So, for example, when a person is angry, what kind of the decisions that person is making, decision making, and how a person who is stress free, so what kind of the decision that person is making. So you need to understand so how this emotion affect decision making, and at the same time when you look at this one in the light of the emotion, motivation. So people's perception and calculation of the situations are filled with emotional content that significantly influence how much effort they exert. Emotionally committed people are highly motivated in their job. So that is yet another important dimension of the emotion that needs to be understood. So when you look at this in the light of organizational culture, so emotional people, emotionally committed people, so that's very positive dimension of this motivation. So that is how these emotionally motivated people who have high level of motivation towards their task, towards their job. So that's how you can understand that. And the leadership that you can understand, transformative leaders are the mostly successful people in the world who rely mostly on the expression of the feelings to help convey their message because they have some sort of uh, particular inspirational power to inspire people to to capture their minds with the love and affection and their skill, so that convince the people towards their job. So that is because of their vision, because of their inspirational leadership. So they play a vital role in the organization. So, interpersonal conflicts. If you are a transformative leader, if you are a successful manager, so you can successfully resolve the conflicts of the different people in the organization because of there are conflicts because of those conflicts. Uh, you may detract from the targets of the organization to achieve. So that's why a manager needs to resolve the conflicts in order to reach at the target. Deviant work behavior, and employee deviance. So these two things are, when you look at the deviant, what is deviant work behavior? So that is the deviant work behavior means a negative emotion that can lead to a number of deviant workplace behavior. If you have a negative emotion, so the emotion that is, if you are not emotionally safe and secure, if you are not emotionally uh, mm, uh, reliable, so that triggers you to behave, a sort of deviation of the rules and regulation, violation of the rules and regulation in the organization, and you probably will be a trouble for the organization with those deviant behavior. So any sort of voluntary, any sort of actions that is at your end as an employee's end that violates the established rules and regulations and norms of the organization, so that not only threatens the organization and its members, but also both of the organization and the members themselves. So, so these all kind of the things play a vital role in achieving the organizational goals. If you as a manager, you understand how to deal with a deviant work behavior employee, and how to play your leadership role, and what kind of the decisions you need to make. So all these depends upon your emotional intelligence. If you are an emotionally intelligent manager, so you can manage all those kind of things. So this is all about today's lecture about this emotion applications in the organizational behavior, and how these emotions, play a significant role in a very positive and a very negative manner. So, what are the dimensions of the emotions? How these emotional uh, dimensions affect the performance of the organization? What is the behavior that is understood in the light of the organizational culture, in the light of your motivation, your perception, your learning, values, attitudes, and your personality patterns, and all those kind of things. So, and before that, we talked thoroughly about the perception, different perception, and the shortcuts to judge people and attribution theory, what that talks about, what are the important factors which we talk about the perception. That's all about today's lecture, and hopefully we will proceed further to the next segment of the class. So thank you so much for that.